Enter a world where monsters have taken their place among cinematic history, but who are the real monsters? Are they the scaly creatures that haunt our nightmares? Or are they the person you see every day just casually walking down the street? What happens when man outweighs the monster on the screen and creep into our lives and dreams? With our co-hosts Joe Randazzo, Vicky Ray, and Keith Shago, they will uncover who are the real villains as we explore the classic cinema along with some modern greats and find the monster within us.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and it's M&M, Monsters and Madness. We'll be discussing two films dealing with monsters or madmen. And today we're discussing Deliverance from 1972 and Race with the Devil from 1975. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us. We got one person with us today, is Joe Randazzo. Hello, Joe.
Hey, everyone.
And I'm your host, Keith Shago. And before we get started, let's find out what Joe's been up to. Last time we spoke to you.
I'm my second or third weekend on a new blog that I started at Substack, joerandazzo.substack.com. I've basically been covering whatever movies I've felt like it. It's a lot of classic movies, some modern stuff. I put in my thoughts on the new Evil Dead movie, Renfield, Super Mario Brothers, and a whole host of older films ranging from stuff from the 1930s to whenever. It's been doing pretty well. I already got a few paid subscribers, but that is an optional thing. You don't have to pay for it. You can just subscribe for free, and I appreciate people who do even that and share the pieces that I write that they like. So I've been doing one or two posts a day. I'm trying to do it every single day because there's already people who paid for annual subscriptions, so I've got to make sure I churn them out quickly, because if you're paying for it, I feel like I do have to give you something for your money. Besides that, I work at a bar in Chicago, and that's starting to get busy again, and thankfully we're starting to make money again after the down season. But that's really about it. I'm gonna be busy the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be working at a local high school, subbing and proctoring tests. So that's my next 2 weeks after today. Today's my last day off until May 15th. It looks like.
Oh, okay. What do you think of the Evil Dead Rise?
I actually liked it. If this might be a little. I don't know if it's very similar to the first movie, similar in tone, certainly. Sean Steffen, who does the Batman podcast with us, has told me he felt it was a little too mean-spirited. If you're looking for the humor of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, it's not really as humorous as those. It shies away from a lot of the humor. Comparatively, I mean, I like that they got out of the cabin in the woods and they moved it into an apartment complex in Los Angeles. And I feel like that could open up more going forward if they do more of these. But a lot of the beats are the same. It does do a lot of fan service. You still get the chainsaw. You get something that's similar to the tree scene in the first movie, but it's more of but it takes place in an elevator. When you get the demon kind of banging out of the cellar in the first one, they kind of do that with the demon banging at the door in Evil Dead Rise. So there's a lot of stuff that's similar. Tonally, it's very much like the first movie, where it's got very, very little laugh out loud humor. It does have some, but not a great deal. Overall, I liked it, and I thought it was very good. The gore is very good. There are times where it's really, really creepy, and it kind of felt at times like Euro horror, like some of the shots kind of looked like Wreck by Paco Plaza. I heard another reviewer compare it to Demons 2, and that's pretty apt because that's a great apartment like Demon Rise movie. Overall, I really enjoyed it though. I enjoyed it more than Renfield. I saw that too, and that Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult are fantastic and leans into the comedy a lot. I like it, but I didn't love it. I of the two, I'd say go see Evil Dead Rise. That's really it for those two. What have you been up to, Keith?
I think the last show will be out soon, folks. If that's not out already by the time you hear this. But Super Mario Brothers is probably what we saw, the 4D.
I love Super
X,
Mario Brothers.
which I loved it. I just smiled all the way through, and it was fantastic. And I laughed, and I really enjoyed it. I watched another interesting thing on Sky here, which is on Sky here, and I imagine it's probably on over there on whatever channels. But Super Pets, the animated series about superheroes' pets.
I know of a movie. I didn't know there was a series.
Yeah, no, it's a movie. It's the movie, not a series.
Oh, okay. The one with the Rock doing the voice of I think Superman's dog.
Yeah,
I haven't
really
seen
loved
it.
Loved it. It was really fun. I laughed all the way through it. It was fantastic. And then but just watching this, and I did watch Beef on Netflix, which Vicky was raving about, which I highly recommend. It's an A24 TV series. So with that, you know pretty much what you're gonna get. So it's a kind of a thinking man's. It's not a horror or anything like that, but it's the depths of to what two people will do just to get back at each other, which I found it, and the acting, and it's fantastic. The way that it's put together is really well, and it never once dips. It just keeps going and going, and even the ending has a well paid off. You feel it's well paid off. So
that's one that
so
I've been looking forward to seeing. I gotta get a chance to see it soon.
well, I'm glad that A24 are kind of going into the series front as well, because it just gives us something more interesting. Because I know that their horror films are very interesting, and their films are very interesting, and I think Ari Aster is working on a new film, so I can't remember the name of it, but I saw something for it coming through. So
Was it
obviously,
what's it called? Bo is Not Afraid, I think. Is that Ari Aster?
yeah, I think so.
I've read stuff about people apparently not realizing how twisted a movie it is. Oh yeah, that is Ari Aster's movie. I read that people are not realizing how twisted the movie is and actually walking out on it. The thing that's kept me from going to see it is that 179-minute runtime. Which, man, I'll get around to it. I'll get around to it. Sean dragged me to see John Wick 4, and that was a long movie, and I actually enjoyed it. But yeah, I've been kind of like really like does every movie need to be 3 hours? But Ari Aster, I think, has earned it with his other movies. So I remember a couple years ago.
I do prefer the long cut of Midsummer over the short cut of it. And I had the long cut. Whenever I watch Midsummer, well, I've only watched it 3 times, but well, I guess 3 times is quite a lot considering it's only been out for a couple of years. But when I do watch the long version of it, because I think his films never feel padded. They just feel like they need to breathe. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I get from him.
Midsummer certainly felt that way.
Yeah. And even Hereditary, I mean, Hereditary is quite a long film, but for me, it doesn't feel long. I'm always kind of like, I think it's because he always has these really strong acting going on at the same time. So you're like in awe of what the acting that's going on at the same time as it's pressing forward with its story.
Well, it's also he's really good at setting tension in movies. Like he's able to make you to have things happening where you're just sitting there in anticipation, knowing something's coming, and you don't know what it is, and you know that it's going to be twisted. Excuse me, and that's what it was with Midsummer. I remember Shanta was the one who got me to watch that one finally. She was just like, you have to see it, you have to see it, you have to see it, you have to see it. And I finally saw it, and I was like, all right, well, you were right. This is amazing. So I will check out Bo is Not Afraid because I really like Ari Aster so far. So I don't know if I'm going to see it in theaters. I will try to get out to see it, but like I said, this is my last day off for 2 weeks. So me seeing anything in the theater right now probably isn't happening for the next couple of weeks. I really wanted to take Shanta and her daughter to see Mario Brothers in 4D, because there's one theater right in between where we live that it's the same distance for both of us. So I was like, hey, let's see if we could do it. And now we're just trying to figure out when we could do it, that I'm not working at one of the two jobs and she's not working and has the kid, and we'll see. I just want to see the wonder in a 4-year-old's eyes in 4D watching the Super Mario Brothers movie, because I feel like that would probably be amazing.
I mean, I really enjoyed it in 4D. I would highly recommend it. I don't know. Apparently, they're going to start doing horror films in 4D, which should be interesting. I guess it would depend what horror films are doing. But
Depends on who's doing it, yeah.
but it fit Mario Brothers, and I mean, I know the kids that were in the theater with us were all in awe, and even the adults were in awe as well. The whole experience, and the chairs rocking and stuff like this. The only thing I did find weird, that if you're pregnant, apparently you can't get in.
Oh, you can't do 4D if you're pregnant?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I had no idea either.
Maybe
so
something
I
in the
thought that was a bit
seats.
weird.
I don't know.
Maybe it's the rocking or the sharp bouncing and stuff like that. Maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe. I don't know. But but when they gave you just warning thing, you're like, what? And people under like a certain height. Okay.
Yeah, I had to look it up. It's a minimum age to get into one of those is 4 years old, and Xena just turned 4 like last week. But we could sit her between us, and if it starts rocking too hard, we could kind of reach over and like put our hand over her to make sure she doesn't go flying out of the seat.
To be honest, it didn't rock that hard for the one that I went to. I mean, I've been on bus rides going to work. They were a lot more rockier than that. So.
I mean, last year I saw Top Gun Maverick in 4D, and that was a fun experience. And I haven't revisited the movie yet because I'm kind of afraid that I'm wondering without the 4D, does it still hold up? Because I enjoyed the hell out of it in 4D, and I bought the Blu-ray, and I really, really want to throw it on one night, but I'm like, I just don't. I'm just worried that I'm gonna look at, oh, okay, well, it was the 4D that carried it.
Well, that was like me for the first Avatar film. I saw Avatar at the IMAX in 3D, loved it. Tried to watch. I can't watch that film again. Every time I watch it, it's like it's bloody Ferngully. I just can't watch it again. Every time I try, it's like, and the thing is, I really enjoyed this at the cinema and at the IMAX 3D. I can't enjoy it now. Why? So it must be just, I was probably in all the splendor of it, but maybe the storyline would just bypass me the first time, and I was just the.
Maybe that's why I've never been a fan of Avatar. I've seen it on. I saw it at home. I never saw it in the theater. Maybe that's why I'm not. Maybe that's why I don't get it the way everybody else does. Everybody else raves about it like it's this fantastic thing, and I'm just like, it was okay.
Well, to be honest, if you want the storyline, Ferngully does it in 80 minutes compared to the 2.5 hours of Avatar. So
that's how I felt about it. I was like, it's Ferngully with blue people.
Now I saw Top Gun at home, Maverick at home, because it came on TV here, like a month after it appeared at the cinema, and I enjoyed it. So you might enjoy it without this special, because I thought it was actually a good film, and I wasn't a huge fan of the first Top Gun film, but actually preferred this one.
I've got to watch them back to back because I left the theater going, is this? I'm a big proponent of waiting for a movie to age a little bit before I say it's better than the previous one. And yeah, I felt coming out that it was a better movie than the first one, but I really have to. I want to watch them both back to back again and see like how the rewatchability is, because the first one is very rewatchable. It's not the greatest story in the world. It's not it's not the end all be all of cinema, but if it's one of those movies where, growing up, if it came on TV, if I'm flipping through channels and I see Top Gun, I'm like, oh, you know what the hell? Yeah, it's Saturday afternoon. It's raining out. I'm not doing anything. I'll sit here and watch Top Gun.
It's very 80s as well.
It is very
Top
80s.
Gun. And I probably should watch it again because I haven't seen it since Quentin Tarantino said it was a gay movie. So I probably should watch it again. Now it has those kind of undertones given to me by good old QT. Maybe I should watch it again and see if I see the same thing he saw in it, because it bypassed me when I went and saw it at the cinema at the first time around. So, but
Made me rethink Like a Virgin. When his rant in Reservoir Dogs.
You want to be fucked really hard like a virgin. That's what it's about.
She wants it to hurt like it did the first time. So you enjoyed the Mario Brothers, and you enjoyed Super Pets. So I've heard nothing but bad things about Super Pets. So I never watched it. Maybe I'll give it a shot. It's probably on HBO Max here.
I didn't go. I didn't go to the movie theater. Maybe if I paid for it, I might have felt differently about it. But I just put it on because it's like, okay, I got an hour and a half before I go to bed. I don't want to go to bed too early, so I'll put it on. That'll get me to bed about 12 o'clock. Sat here with Ferris and put it on, and I just smiled. I was laughing, and I was really enjoying it. So I don't know. It's like,
it's on HBO Max here, so yeah, it'll be a free watch for me, and it doesn't look to be that long. Wait, what was the runtime on that?
90 maybe.
Oh no, it's 105.
Well, it didn't feel like 105 to me. So,
and that's great. If it doesn't feel like 105 minutes, that's fantastic.
And they do take the piss out of Batman and Superman and all the other ones as well, which is quite fun. I mean, the Batman thing is they take the piss out of him so much. It's really funny.
Which maybe that's why a lot of people don't like it, is they don't like the piss being taken out of Batman and Superman, because you got all these like real huge fanboys of those movies. And maybe they're just like, how dare you make fun of it?
It takes the piss out of like the Lego stuff does, or like the Lego Batman stuff does. So it's got
Lego Batman
kind of humor
is
too.
Fantastic. I love the Lego Batman movie, and that's the same director as Renfield, by the way. So it's Renfield works more as like a parody of Dracula than like a serious sequel or serious movie. So
I think it's really hard to put Nicolas Cage in a serious movie nowadays. So it seems like
yeah. Well, I mean, we covered The Color Out of Space, and he's very good in that. He's very good in Mandy. He's very good in Pig.
Yeah, he's very good in that as well.
So he could do it. It's just everybody now expects Nicolas Cage the meme.
Yeah. And that's what he likes to deliver, a lot more. He'll do like his little, acting piece and, get great reviews. And then he'll do like 10 movies in succession.
I didn't know until recently. He's a huge classic horror fan. Like apparently somebody introduced him to John Carpenter, and they did like this interview together, and they were just talking the whole time about like Universal Monsters and Val Lewton and Hammer films and Nosferatu and all this stuff. And so apparently this was a passion project for Cage too. So like I said, I'm fine with it. I don't think it's anything groundbreaking. I think it's a fun little movie. Don't think
I would like
hard.
to see. Yeah, I would like to see. I like someone to do like a serious conversation with Nicolas Cage about his uncle.
Yeah, that would be.
And see what kind of influences are there, because when you hear about, he's very into classics anyway, whether it's classic music or classic movies and stuff like this. And it'd be quite interesting to see how much of an influence his uncle had on him as well.
It very well could be. Hey, this is my Academy Award-winning uncle who's introducing me to all these movies. So it could be one of those.
He never really talks too much about that, or everyone knows, but you never hear either one talk about the other.
To his credit, he's never used it, as far as I know, as far as I can tell. Well, although he did go by Nicholas Coppola in the beginning, he never name drops and goes, hey, yeah, my uncle directed two of the greatest movies ever made. Never brings that up.
He did appear in one of his uncle's films, didn't he? Peggy Sue
Got Married. Yeah, he was the I think he was like the rebellious guy who was that who he was? It's been a while since I've seen it.
He's the one that's married to Kathleen Turner.
Oh, was he? Okay.
And they kind of aged him. It's kind of weird because they aged him up, kept her at her age, and then when they went back in time, they kind of like put him at his regular age and put her and then aged her down. So it's kind of like this weird kind of thing that they did with them.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Peggy Sue Got Married, but yeah, it's
the only thing I remember about his performance is that he was still doing that kind of Valley Guy kind of acting at that time, like in the 80s. Because he was doing a lot of that kind of stuff around that time, sort of thing.
Was he kind of the badass of when they went back to the younger days? Was he kind of like the badass rebellious kid? That's what I was thinking. Okay, yeah. So I wasn't off on that.
He always played the rebellious first kid when he was younger. Even in Valley Girl, he was kind of the rebellious kind of.
Wild at Heart.
Yeah, Wild at Heart. No one understands me. even though I'm trying to be Elvis. So much so I'll marry his daughter. Yay. But guess we shouldn't talk about his daughter. That's pretty sad now. On that note, let's go to Deliverance, which is an American thriller film produced and directed by John Boorman and starring Jon Voight, Burt Reynolds, Ned Beatty, and Ronny Cox, with the latter two making their feature film debuts. The screenplay was adapted by James Dickey, who also appears as the sheriff, from the 1970 novel of the same name. The film was critical and box office success, earning 3 Academy Award nominations and 5 Golden Globe Award nominations. Widely acclaimed as a landmark picture, the film is noted for a music scene near the beginning with one of the city men playing dueling banjos on guitar with a banjo-picking country boy. It is also notorious for its brutal depiction of a sodomized rape, before which the victim was compelled to squeal like a piggy by his attacker. In 2008, Deliverance was selected by Preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. And it's one of the only films that all 4 actors would do their own stunts without any insurance. So what we'll do is we'll cut to the trailer of Deliverance and be right back.
Where are you going, city boy?
We'll find it.
It ain't nothing but the biggest river in the state.
These are the men. Nothing very unusual about them. Suburban guys like you or your neighbor. Nothing very unusual about them until they decided to spend one weekend canoeing down the Cohulawasi River. Ed Gentry, he runs an art service. Wife Martha has a boy, Dee. Lewis Medlock has real estate interests, talks about resettling in New Zealand or Uruguay. Drew Ballinger, he's sales supervisor for a soft drink company. Bobby Tripp, bachelor, insurance and mutual funds.
Where you going?
All right, I'm looking.
These are the men who decided not to play golf that weekend. Instead, they sought the river.
Would you like to jacket on?
He could be out there anywhere, watching us right now. We ain't gonna be so nice, not hard to follow, dragging a corpse.
Lewis, I'm gonna pull off to the side. There's something wrong. No, go on!
What is it?
Oh, stop it! No, hell, I'm gonna pull you. No, no!
John Boorman's film of James Dickey's explosive best-selling novel.
Welcome back to the License Podcast. Talking about Deliverance from 1972. So, Joe, what are your thoughts of Deliverance?
I had seen this before, so this is a rewatch for me, but this was the first time that like I was, more zeroed in on what was going on. the thing that stuck out to me is I'm like, wow, this is so good. How did this not win any Academy Awards that I can remember? And then I went and looked at the year and I was like, oh, that's right, The Godfather. So of course it's not, you're not beating that juggernaut. Really, really good, really, really tense, really well acted. Absolutely fantastic movie. The Ned Beatty scene is still painful and cringeworthy to watch. I don't mean cringeworthy in like the bad form of cringy that people associate with the word now, but what happens to him actually makes you cringe. I mean, that still doesn't explain it. Cringy is in negative, as in not good. It's the film itself is very good. What happens to Ned Beatty is very, very rough to watch. Yeah, and actually, I didn't know until now they all did their own stunts, so I'm amazed nobody got. None of these guys ended up getting killed or hurt. But
they got hurt. I think Burt Reynolds broke collarbone. Someone else broke an arm. Jon Voight, when he's climbing up the mountain, did his own climbing up the mountain.
Oof.
Without a harness.
That's one thing I would never do.
They're all very dedicated. So.
Yeah, and all four men became stars. So they were recognized for their their hard work on this movie. And the Dueling Banjos scene, of course, sticks out to me at the beginning, and it's actually, you do find yourself kind of getting into it like the local does, where you almost start clapping like he does.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the better films we watched on for this podcast so far. Absolutely love it.
I think the way that it was filmed is just magnificent, but I also like the social commentary that's going on with it as well, which I really like. The simple fact that as modern times are encroaching into these communities and stuff like this, and basically it's like throwing them all underwater is kind of basically what's happening, and how modern man comes into the community and thinks that they know better than everyone else, and this whole thing that we are superior over you. And I thought that was very, very well in touch. But I also like the role reversals that we got as well, because you got the Burt Reynolds character, and he's coming in and he's like this macho man. And of course, once he gets hurt, then what we get is Jon Voight overtaking that role by taking his shirt off and then putting on the vest, and he's almost like copying the Burt Reynolds, but with a more sensible tone to it. And then you got the Ned Beatty character switching, and everyone's character is just slowly turning as the movie goes on. And I thought the character study of how these four men work together was very, very interesting. And especially with the Burt Reynolds character, him being so hard, it's like, get fat. I don't want to work with, be in the boat with fatty anymore, and so on and so forth. And then when he gets hurt, I mean, he becomes worse than Ned Beatty does at any point in the film, when he breaks his femur. And you're kind of going, oh, this is very interesting how this all turns out. Well, yeah, but I also like the juxtaposition that after it's all over and they got the cops and they go back to their home, and then Ned Beatty goes, I don't want to see you for a long time. And then that they're all going to be haunted by this experience for the rest of their lives. And it's kind of weird because you start off with Burt Reynolds being kind of a main character, but by the end of it, he's now sidelined.
Yeah, and Jon
that was interesting as well.
Lead, yeah. The other thing is, yeah, you mentioned Jon Voight's character being the more sensible one, yet when he's up on top of the mountain and he wakes up that morning and he sees the hunter, he immediately just assumes it's the guys who attacked them and just shoots at them. Yeah. Which, again, is part of that character arc where he does change a little bit, because the whole time he does seem to be the one who does seem sensible. But yeah, he does kind of start to turn as more things happen. I mean, it's when it said that, like, everything about who you are is just an amalgamation of everything that you've been through, and these guys are put through the ringer in this movie. Between everything that's going on, And yeah, you're right. At the beginning, they do come off kind of dickish when they're at the gas station with the the little boy picking on the banjo, and they do kind of talk down to the guy that runs the station, and they do kind of while the little boy also, who maybe isn't socially as aware, he has his way of communicating, which is just plucking away on the banjo. When they go for the handshake, the little boy just kind of backs off and like, no, like I don't know you. But the way that you're talking down to this boy's, I think that was his father running the gas station. The way you're talking down to this man, this kid has no reason to want to shake your hand. Like I could get why he could kind of see you as someone who is who's a little intimidating.
Yeah, and the whole thing, even like when they're getting like, can you get? I mean, we later find out that one of the men who accosts the Ned Beatty character and the Jon Voight character is one of the men who is moving the cars for them. Yeah. But even the way that they, the way that are spoken to about, oh, we'll do it for 50, no, we'll do it 40, and the talking down at the whole time, and so which is kind of weird, because you're kind of wondering, it's like, if they treated them with the same level of respect as they would anyone else, maybe this might not have happened.
It wouldn't have happened in the first place, maybe. Yeah, that's
precisely.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what they're doing in this movie. Is they're going into this small town like, hey, we're from the big city, we know better than you. We're gonna talk down to you countrified rubes. And I'm not saying anybody deserves to be raped. So, nor am I condoning or saying I understand it, but yeah, I could see the anger on these guys who were like, why are you coming down into my territory, talking down to me, talking to me like I'm some idiot who doesn't understand anything.
And another thing, I guess, which I also realized, I mean, this Deliverance is kind of a weird thing for us, because when we were 14 years old, we had to read this book in school. And then they showed us this movie when we were 14. And I had to sit there and say, when you're 14 years old, for the next 2 months, we kept saying it to each other, squeal like a piggy boy, you sure got a pretty mouth. not really understanding what we were saying, sort of thing. But now viewing this, here I am, 40 years later, and like kind of viewing it, it's like, it's weird how all these different things you start picking up out of the situation. And another thing I thought to myself was like, why they're talking down to the locals. And yes, they are inbred, and yes, these communities are so far back into the woods that that there's not a lot of mixing of blood that goes on in these communities. And does that make them stupider or worse off than we are? I don't know, because at the end of the day, when you don't have much schooling and you don't have much movability, and the thought of actually leaving this community to go out into the big world, what are you going to do? Work at McDonald's? What kind of life you're going to have then, or whatever. So however way they sustain their life is the way they sustain their life. But to have these people from outside kind of use them as something to laugh at, but at the same time, these people are also being uprooted and misplaced to God knows where, because that whole area is going to be flooded, because they're making a dam so modern world can have electricity. So in that way, there's also that the insensibility of the four main characters, basically not even taking that into account, even though we hear Burt Reynolds before, with the black screen before the credits even come up, talk about this is what's happening. And so that means they all know, and then the men, I think you hear Jon Voight, and I'm not quite sure if you hear any Ned Beatty or Ronny Cox's character. I think Ronny Cox is more of the vegetarian, liberal, free thinker. He seems to be a bit more in that group than and then I think Burt Reynolds is probably the other end of the scale. So they're the two ends of the scales as far as their political beliefs are concerned. But Jon Voight goes, well, we need progress. We need electric lights. We look at the progress that will happen because of this. But then I remember, like, after the end of the movie, I was thinking about that and thinking that the progress is not going to be for this community that's going to be uprooted. It's going to be for us. The progress is for the modern man. It's not going to be a progression for these people. Not sure what, because you and it's quite interesting because they never tell you where they're moving them to. Where are they moving these communities? I mean, you see them digging up the dead bodies and moving the bodies and moving the church and everything like that, but where are they moving them to? Are they moving them to a suburb somewhere? Are they moving them further back into the woods? Are they moving them to a gated community? Or are they moving them to an Amish community? It's really, it's really hard to figure out, so they never really tell you what the plight of these people are going to be, which I found interesting as well.
Well, and it's almost like, yeah, we don't care is kind of the four main characters don't care. Is kind of the vibe that you get from it, because like you said, Ned Beatty is talking about, we gotta get lights, we gotta progress as a society, and on one hand, I do agree with him on that, but at the same time, how much progress can you have if you're leaving certain people behind? And that's certainly a real dilemma for these people, for these kind of backwoods people, and you still kind of see it today when. You get like people saying, oh, we gotta most recently with AI is, yes, it's going to move things to the future, but what's going to happen to actual creators, people who are actually creating something? They're going to go by the wayside and everything's going to be computer generated. We hear it all the times with certain voting blocks, because while they might be more liberal in some areas, they're also like, hey, but what happens to all the coal jobs? And do we just ignore them and move on without them? I've heard people say, oh, well, let's train them to do something else. In some cases, these people have been doing it 20, 30 years. They don't know anything else.
Well, you can take that with the regular shopping at a supermarket. I don't know what it's like there, but in this country, I mean, all the supermarket checkout lines are going. They're all self-service now.
A lot of them are here too. Not as like I'd say, like the supermarket I normally go to, it's like 6 or 7 regular aisles, and you have one aisle that has like 8 self-checkout machines. So yeah, what's going to happen to those people who are bagging your groceries?
Even McDonald's. I remember, like, McDonald's, and I know this is a weird thing to create it to, but McDonald's here, basically, I didn't work at McDonald's, but I worked at a Sonic. So it's almost the same thing. Back when I was in college. But the thing is, you would flip burgers and then you work your way to the front cashier. Nowadays, in the McDonald's in this country, is that you go to a screen, you pick out what you want to buy, you put your card in, that pays for it, and then you wait for your number to call. Yeah. So you don't order at the counter anymore. So, and you think to yourself, like, God, McDonald's, there's not even, you go to McDonald's now, do you progress in just packing food? Is that what your progression is?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Not really progress, is it?
Not really.
A lot of restaurants here started to do the tablet on, not either the tablet or the QR code on the table. You can just order all your own stuff, and then you're still expected to tip out a server.
Yeah, that's what's here in a lot of places as well. So, and the worst thing about it is when you're doing the QR service and you order, and then your bill comes through on your phone, and then you go to pay your bill, and then you have to go to your app on your phone to your bank to confirm it on your app, and then you try to bounce back, and it bounces back, and the screen's no longer there, and you're like,
I haven't dealt with that yet. But as somebody who works in a bar, what's going to happen to people like me when that becomes the norm? Are we just going? It's just going to be, well, sorry, kid, you're done. You've been doing this for 10, 15 years, and now you got nothing. You got nothing to go for it. You got nothing to show for it.
Or do they pay, or you keep your job and they just pay you less?
Or you're no longer a server and they pay you minimum wage, which is less than I would make in tips.
Precisely. So
same
like, going back to supermarket, you start off as stocking shelves, and the hope is that one day you be a cashier and make a bit more money. Not that it's a huge rate, Then from cashier, you normally can, if you're lucky, you might become manager, but you normally have to go through that progression. But if that progression is not there, so basically they probably don't have to pay you more than a stock shelfer.
Yeah.
So where's your progression? Where's your need to do better so you can do better you might go upwards. So
Exactly.
it's something to really think about.
When you eliminate the ability to actually move forward, it's going to create this stagnation in the middle, because okay, this is as far as I can progress. Well, I'm barely making ends meet. So what am I supposed to do? And that's when we start getting into, certain cities have started the universal basic income thing, where it's like, no, we're gonna give you $1,000 every month. You just work for whatever else you need. This is to take care of like basic necessities. Just $1,000 a month doesn't take care of anything. It'll help. Certainly, it'll help. With help towards your rent and towards your groceries. But what's going to end up happening is prices are going to rise again. So it's right now
we have something like that in this country. In London, for instance, if you're within the M25, within 25 is this expressway that circles around London. So if you're inside the M25, you get a thing called London waiting, gets added onto your wages. But at the same time, is what you're saying, is the prices go up and stuff like this, your London waiting doesn't really go up. But what also happens, though, you start thinking, you think of this as part of your income. And of course, once you think of this as part of your income, that if something happens, and what they're finding now is they're taking jobs inside the M25 and moving them just outside the M25, and the London waiting goes. So you're doing the same job and getting £2,000 less.
Yeah,
a year or whatever.
And
that's what they'll do with the universal credit sort of thing. Well, basically, it's like, well, the companies be like, well, what we can do is we move you slightly outside the city. We'll have your job there. So now you might have to commute, and then you might be missing this amount. But by that time, you're so used to this amount being part of your paycheck, it's going to be really hard to try to, economize this bulk of money that you're used to being part of a monthly spend.
Plus, now you're commuting further, so you're spending more money on the commute. So it
precisely,
and that's basically, that's kind of what this movie is kind of talking about, is what happens to that segment of the population that kind of just gets left behind, and it does it really, really effectively.
I found another interesting thing about Deliverance this time around is that I kind of thought of the country people as the villains of the piece. Watching it now, I don't think of them as the villains of the piece. I didn't think of them as then even the guys who were, going to sodomize Ned or whatever like that. It's kind of funny. I didn't see them as evil. I saw them as people who shouldn't be doing what they shouldn't be doing, sort of thing. I'm not quite sure why they were doing this. I do think it has something to do with, because when they're getting the canoe, and those four guys are slagging them off and making fun of them. And you see the three guys who are moving their cars behind the bushes, listening to them before they back away to move the cars. So, I mean, did they deserve that? Have that happen? No, they didn't deserve it. But at the same time, they didn't come across as the villains. And the whole thing about, and then something else I noticed, which is quite interesting. Oh, the Ronny Cox character. Oh, he was shot. But then they go, we can't find a bullet hole on him. We can't find where he was shot. So basically, he went into the water because of shock. He wasn't shot. So this other person may not have shot them. They might not, because you don't hear any gunshots or anything.
Well, I was gonna say, I just thought that was just them being paranoid at that point. Because I never thought even for a second that he was shot. Because when you look at him before that, he does look like somebody who has been completely traumatized and is in a state of shock.
Yeah.
So yeah. What was I gonna say right before that though? As far as I still see the two guys who are actually raping Ned Beatty. I definitely see them as the villains. But at least for that time period where it's happening. As far as the villains in this kind of, there isn't really, I think, a set villain. I mean, they just kind of become paranoid, and that causes them to make a lot of mistakes. It's kind of man versus nature in some respects, and man versus himself in some others. because a lot of the issues that they come across, I mean, who knows if those guys were going to rape them anyway? Who the hell knows? But
Well, we're not quite sure if they're going to murder, if they're going to kill them.
well, they
But
might kill them too. Yeah.
Well, I think is we don't know if they're going to. Because it's kind of weird, like watching it this time around. I thought to myself, like, are they teaching us like you look down on us, we'll show you, and then would they let them go, or were they going to kill them? Because they must have known that the other two they had the other two people with them. So what? So it's really kind of hard to figure out what whether the reasoning is like because they're making fun of them, it's like, well, we'll show you, how dare you make fun of us? Is that the reason why this happened? Or were they just out to just basically, they saw these two men and just fuck with them just for the sake of it? Because you're never quite sure really. And it's only that one line where the guys said that both of them didn't come home. So now you have to assume that this other guy that was shot might have been the other guy with the shotgun that ran off. But they never make that clear if that's the same guy. But if the other guy didn't come back, obviously it might have been. I don't know.
Or it could just be he ran off because he's like, oh shit, they killed him. They're either going to kill me, or they're going to go to the authorities and report that I did this, and then my life is over here. So I'm just going to move on to the next town. That could
yes. So you're never quite sure of the situation there either. So it's quite an interesting. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and there are answered questions, that's what I quite like about Deliverance.
Yeah, and John Boorman, he's kind of a mixed bag as a director. You've got Deliverance, and I think he also did Excalibur, right?
Excalibur. He did,
but then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Zardoz and Exorcist 2, which not exactly two of the most well-regarded movies ever. And he did that after this, which makes me think he maybe had a little bit of clout and was able to do whatever job he wanted, and he decided to go do Zardoz, and that did not do well. And then maybe Warner was like, okay, let's reel it in a little. We lost some money on this. You need to direct one of our bigger franchises now. Here's Exorcist 2, The Heretic. And that didn't go well either.
Well, yeah. I mean, Boorman and Dickey got in a fist fight over Boorman was changing the script as they were filming, and because Dickey wrote the script based on his book. They got in a fist fight, and Dickey is a lot bigger than Boorman and broke 2 of his teeth.
Oh,
but Boorman never pressed charges against Dickey.
I had no idea that had happened.
And another thing I found interesting is that James Dickey, in my mind, looks totally different. But then when I found out he was the cop in this, it's like
I didn't realize that until you said it at the outset here. I didn't realize that was actually James Dickey, but yeah, he's kind of a big guy. Yeah, not somebody I'd want to get into a fist fight with.
I mean, the film is infamous for the cost cutting by the studio in effect to kill it, and having the actors perform their own stunts, such as Jon Voight notably climbing the cliff himself. Reynolds requested to have one scene reshot with himself in the canoe rather than a dummy, as it tumbled over a real waterfall. Reynolds recalled his shoulder and his head hitting rocks and floating downstream with all his clothes torn off. Then waking up with director Boorman at his bedside. Reynolds asked, "How'd it look?" And Boorman said, "It looked like a dummy falling over a waterfall." Beatty almost drowned, and Reynolds cracked his tailbone.
Regarding the courage. Go ahead.
Yeah. It says, regarding the courage of the 4 men actors in the movie performing their own stunts without insurance protection, Dickey was quoted as saying all of them had more guts than a burglar. In a nod to their stunt performing audacity, early in the movie, Lewis says, "Insurance? I never been insured in my life. I don't believe in insurance. There's no risk," which was added just before they shot all that.
The funny thing is, I think I had heard that Burt Reynolds Boorman story with how did it look? It looked like a dummy going over. I think I'd heard that before, but it's actually kind of funny when you say that Burt Reynolds hit his head on a lot of them, because he has that line of dialogue where I think he's telling Ned Beatty, where Ned Beatty's like, "What if we fall over?" He goes, "Well, make sure if anything hits the rocks, it's not your head." So it's actually kind of ironic that it ended up happening to him.
Yeah, it's quite funny. This is I think this is another film that we probably should mention that actually rocketed Burt Reynolds to be a movie star. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
the movie that did it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Burt Reynolds ended up being the biggest star out of the four by far. I know Smokey and the Bandit was what, like 3-4 years later, and that probably propelled him even more.
And Jon Voight was coming off Midnight Cowboy.
Yeah, Jon Voight.
So-
Did he win the Oscar for that? Or was he only nominated? I know it won Best Picture.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was nominated. I think Dustin Hoffman was nominated as well, wasn't they?
Yeah, I think they both were.
I think both of them were.
I don't know if either one of them won though.
Yeah, it might be because they were against each other. Sometimes those films where they're against each other kind of cancels each one out, doesn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, it didn't happen this year though with Best Supporting Actress with Jamie Lee Curtis and the other woman from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Although I felt the other woman probably had the better performance, but I feel like everyone just kind of galvanized around Jamie Lee Curtis. When is she ever going to get it again? So let's give it to her.
Yeah,
But in that case, they didn't cancel each other out.
Nothing against Jamie Lee Curtis, because I do like Jamie Lee Curtis's performance, especially when you look at Knives Out and some of the other performances she did. But I think because of her performance in the first reboot of Halloween, or the new Halloween films, when you look at the first one there and the second one, and how her acting was, the critics were loving her, it kind of made sense that she would win the supporting actress.
Because they're never going to give it to her for Halloween. Yeah.
Precisely. So I think it was one of those. And plus, she's part of a legacy, isn't she? She's part of the Janet Leigh, Tony Curtis legacy as well.
Yeah. I think that's part of it too. And she's beloved. She's beloved for a long time. But yeah, it's kind of a shame that you'll get these people who are known for these great performances in horror movies getting an Oscar later on for something else that maybe wasn't as good. But it's like, well, we really wanted to give it to you for the reboot of Halloween 4 years ago because you were fantastic in that as like this traumatized woman. But we couldn't give an Oscar to Halloween 9 or 10 at this point. 9. We couldn't give an Oscar to the 9th Halloween movie, so we're going to give it to you for this. She probably could have gotten it for Knives Out too. I'm trying to remember who she was up against that year, but she was fantastic in Knives Out.
Yeah, she's very good in that. So, I think another thing to point out is Ronny Cox, because Ronny Cox, after this, he did a lot of TV roles. I think he did Apple's Way, and he'd always play like the dad figure. But then 10 years later, that would all change with the RoboCop in it.
Yeah,
he plays like the evil.
Well, yeah, he would be the evil. Yeah, I suppose he would be the villain in RoboCop as opposed to what's his name, the other older guy whose name escapes me right now, the Irish actor. Yeah.
Well, the Irish actor, the main guy. I mean, he kind of was kept in the dark. I mean, he comes out more as the evil guy. The second one, and the second one, he comes out as more the evil guy. But you got the other guys like, I think so. It's like Ronny, and after that, Ronny Cox became like the evil kind of character. Ned Beatty's character, I've noticed, is like he was quite fumbly there for a while, because after this, like 5 years later, you do Superman, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he would be Otis, but Daniel Hurley was the other actor in RoboCop we were talking about. Yeah, he would become I guess I always associated him with kind of being the bumbling oaf because of him playing Otis in Superman.
Yeah.
Even while I was watching Deliverance, at one point, Sean was in the living room. He was doing something else. We'd occasionally look up, and I remember at one point we joked about Otisburg. That whole thing with Gina. It's just a tiny little property, Mr. Luthor. It's fantastic. But I've always associated him with being this kind of this kind of oafish character, and maybe he doesn't really deserve that. I remember a couple years ago he had a guest appearance as a judge who was starting to suffer dementia on an episode of Law and Order, and he did a fantastic job playing it. And his secretary, or the court stenographer, who really loved him was kind of cueing him in as to what was going on, so that you couldn't tell that he was losing his mind. But either Sam Waterston or Linus Roach, I don't remember who it was at this point, was kind of picking up the cues that he's not really all there, and kind of exposed him. And he played a really sympathetic role in that. And I think because I had associated him with Otis for so long, that when I saw that, I was like, wow, Ned Beatty's really got the chops. I never knew it.
Did Ned Beatty go on to be like, how like Burt Reynolds films he would have like his key players come back, and Dom DeLuise. I think Ned Beatty was part of that, because I think he did White Lightning with Burt Reynolds.
He was in a few of them, but even then, a lot of the movies where I did see him pop up, I saw him pop up in like that early '90s version of Captain America, and again, he was kind of a bumbling oaf there. I think a lot of the movies that I saw him in, he was kind of,
the bumbling.
Yeah, kind of the bumbling oaf.
Yeah,
I wonder if Superman might have ruined him in that respect.
Yeah, well, he did The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, The Thief Who Came to Dinner, White Lightning, which is Nashville. Oh, he's in Nashville as well. I forgot he was in Nashville.
But I think even that is before Superman.
Yeah, Network.
Yeah, he's great at Network. But yeah, and again, that's pre-Superman. I think Superman kind of ruined Ned Beatty.
Yeah, it looks like that, because after that, then he did like The Incredible Shrinking Woman, Superman 2, The Toy. Then he did a couple more, a couple more Burt Reynolds films. Then he did The Big Easy as well, which I think he played a kind of a sleazy person in that, with Dennis Quaid and Eileen Birkin.
Never seen The Big Easy, so I don't know.
Very good film. I'm Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Back to being. So
it looks like he did a lot more of that. But yeah, for a minute, I wondered, because when I was watching Ned Beatty, it's like he must have had a good relationship with Burt Reynolds, because he started appearing in some Burt Reynolds films, and Burt Reynolds liked to work with the same people over and over and over.
So, I feel like a lot of people do.
Yeah, because I think Burt Reynolds started producing. There's a really good documentary on Amazon about Burt Reynolds that's very, very interesting.
I haven't seen it. What's it called? Do you know?
I'm not quite sure, but I'm sure if you put Burt Reynolds into Amazon Prime, that they'll come up with a documentary, and it talks about him filming his last movie, and how he'd had to take control of his films, and how he decided that he wanted to do the Southern good old boy kind of films, because he knew that's where his audience was, which would rocket him to being a box office.
Absolutely makes sense.
Well, I guess before we move on to the next film, how many stars would you give Deliverance?
Oh, 5. And I honestly think if it wasn't for the fact that it ran into the juggernaut that was The Godfather, this probably what else was nominated that year? This probably would have been, I'd say, the best movie in 1972 if it wasn't for that. I'll look it up real quick. Deliverance, 1972, nominated for 3 Oscars. Oh, well, Cabaret. Okay. So the other 2 films are the Emigrants and Sounder, but it was up against The Godfather and Cabaret. So I guess those are the 3 that would be. But yeah, nobody was beating The Godfather that year. So maybe if The Godfather wasn't there, it had a 50-50 shot.
I think Bob Fosse. Didn't Bob Fosse win one for Cabaret? For director?
It might. I think director went to Coppola that year.
Oh, in Coppola, because I know Godfather 2, you got it.
Oh no, director. No, yeah, you're right. Director went to Bob Fosse for Cabaret. Yeah, you're right. Maybe Coppola won it for 2.
Yeah, he won for the second one. So
Boorman was up for best director. So,
and I think Joel Grey got it for best supporting actor. I think for Cabaret.
Joel Grey did win for Cabaret. Yeah. No, oh wow, there's maybe The Godfather canceling itself out, because you had Al Pacino, James Caan, Robert Duvall all getting nominated, Marlon Brando winning, Laurence Olivier, Michael Caine for Sleuths. All 4 of the main actors were shut out.
Yeah.
No nominations for acting for any of this. It was Boorman as the director and nominated for Best Picture, but that one more. What's the other one? Oh, I was nominated for Best Film Editing, but did not win any of them. But yeah, I think.
Well, to be honest, I can't see how you could pick a best actor out of it. I think when you get a film that's that strong, it's a bit like, I call it like the Steel Magnolias effect. We have all these people have all giving these strong performances. It's really hard to pick one out of this lineup when you got an ensemble piece like this.
I mean, yeah, that's the same thing that happened the same year with The Godfather, because you had Pacino, Duvall, and James Caan all getting nominated. So yeah, what were you gonna do? So yeah, I think I didn't realize, it was same year as Cabaret. So yeah, if The Godfather wasn't there, it had a 50-50 shot. I don't know if Cabaret might have still beaten it. But it's a strong movie, and I'd say one of the best movies we've ever covered here. So absolutely 5 stars. How about you, dude?
I am going to give it a solid 5. This is a movie that when I was putting the year together, I didn't know whether to put into Book the Screen, because the book is fantastic as well. I highly recommend reading the book, or to put this, but because there a lot of what's in the books in the movie, so that's the reason why we didn't do Book the Screen and I moved it to here. So, but it's a solid 5 all the way around. Great performances. It still lives up to the day. It's filmed beautifully. It's one of the most beautifully filmed films.
It definitely is that. It looks amazing. The cinematography is fantastic.
And there's a timeless quality about it as well, which is, it doesn't feel 70s. It doesn't feel dated. Even when they pull up in their cars, it doesn't feel dated. The only thing that feels dated is they don't have mobile phones. That's the only thing that seems to be missing, to make it a modernized film. And it just seems to be as timeless. And I think it would be timeless 50 years from now. So I give it a solid 5.
I mean, it's already been 50 years since it came out. So
yeah.
And we're talking about it like, it's a film that could play well today. And a lot of the problems that we had socially are still here with us now.
And I think, it's quite funny to see Deliverance, because what we would get after Deliverance is horror films dealing with modern people going like Wrong Turn and all the other stuff, taking Deliverance and like running in this other direction, which is quite interesting.
Even immediately after, you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre the very next year. And that's definitely the ultimate movie of, you guys went to the wrong place at the wrong time.
Precisely. You come out of the city and went to the wrong place. Go back to the city, folk.
Exactly.
Which actually brings us to Race with the Devil, which is a 1975 American action horror film directed by Jack Starlett, written by Wes Bishop and Lee Frost, and starring Peter Fonda, Warren Oates, Loretta Swit, and our own Laura Parker. If you're interested in Laura Parker, about how her thoughts about Race with the Devil is, listen to our interview with her. She mentions it. And if this was the second of 3 films Fonda and Oates would star in together, The Hired Hand from 1971 was their first, and 92 in the Shade from 1975 was their third. Race with the Devil is a hybrid of the horror, action, and car chase genres. So what we'll do is cut to the trailer of Race with the Devil and be right back.
2 men on a dream vacation.
What the hell are they doing? I sure think they killed her.
Back!
Frank, they've seen us.
And get trapped in an unbelievable nightmare.
Why? What's wrong? What are you guys up to?
20th Century Fox presents Race the Devil.
We saw somebody murdered.
What?
Some sort of ritual across the river. A girl got stabbed. They're chasing us.
Starring Peter Fonda and Warren Oates. There was nowhere they could hide.
Alice, look what was stuck to the back window. It's some kind of message. Witchcraft.
Witches!
There was no one they could trust.
I killed my dog.
Well, did anybody hear anything? Didn't anybody see anything?
Go on with your trip. Have a good time.
Leave this up to me. There was nothing they could do.
He followed us all the way from Bandera. He's here right now watching us.
But run. And fight.
Shoot him, Frank!
And race with the devil.
There's somebody on top!
Frank has got to leave!
We gotta stay in here! Don't go up!
Peter Fonda, Warren Oates, Loretta Swit, Lara Parker. Race with the devil. When you race with the devil, you'd better be faster than hell.
Hello, welcome back to the Leisure License Podcast. We're discussing Race with the Devil. Well, my thoughts with Race with the Devil, I actually really like this film. I remember the funny thing about Race with the Devil for me is I didn't realize that it was a theatrical film because the first time I saw this was on CBS Saturday Movie, and my mom let me stay up and watch this, and I always thought this was a TV movie. So, I don't know why. I think it's because it has Loretta Swit in it and Laura Parker and Peter Fonda and Warren Oates, and even though Peter Fonda is a film actor, he, it wouldn't surprise me if he did a TV movie here and there, because even though Easy Rider was, I always think of Peter Fonda as Easy Rider, I never really thought of him as a theatrical film actor for some reason in my mind. So, but I quite like this film because it's dealing with these people coming from the city and then kind of encroaching on the small town.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, what I also like about this film is that when you're watching it, if they kept their minds shut and just let the police deal with it and moved along their way, things would work out differently for them. But for some reason, they tend to want to get more and more involved. And even though they are reporting a murder or for whatever reason like this, there is this like in Deliverance. And I remember Ferris asked me, why did you pair these two up? Because they are like modern people coming from the city thinking they know everything and encroaching in on these communities. And the way that Peter Fonda and Warren Oates talks to the police officer when they don't know that he's involved, they don't, they figured all this out. I kind of figured it out in the beginning myself, but
because Archie Armstrong. Archie Armstrong's going to be part of the conspiracy.
Yeah, and because you can see him underneath the mask anyway, because he has a definite look among him. But for them, for inside the film sort of thing, is like they don't know that, and just the way that they're talking to the locals about they know everything and sort of thing. And if they just let things be and just let the community just deal with what the community wants to deal with, they probably would have been a little bit better. The women screaming is a bit much. This is before women were able to defend themselves. You got a lot of women screaming and stuff.
Go ahead.
I was quite happy when Ginger got hung on the RV door. It was like Ginger was annoying. This annoying dog.
That's one thing that would not fly with the new generation is, oh my God, they killed a dog. I can't believe this. Is 0 stars.
0 stars.
But yeah, it's funny because for all the things that have been said about how slasher movies hate women, slasher movies kind of took the woman from being the damsel in distress to being the one that's going to kick the killer's ass in the end. So I never felt that slasher movies were. Some of them are. There's going to be some that obviously hate women. Like if you watch Lucio Fulci's New York Ripper, there is a disdain for women that shines through in that movie. But I feel like for the most part, it's almost always a woman that ends up standing up. So she kind of takes everything to a new place. At least when like Halloween comes out and A Nightmare on Elm Street and some of those films. There was a slasher movie that I've been working on. I've been writing and rewriting over the last couple of years, and once I get it right, I'll start sending it out to places. But I remember it's evolved so much now, that we're gone so far away from the woman just being the damsel in distress, that I actually have a scene where the final girl in the beginning of the movie actually squares off and fights the killer before we reveal who it is, because it's somebody behind a mask. So yeah, the days of the damsel in distress here are long, long gone. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I also kind of understand how Ferris felt. Like, why did you pair these two together? Because tonally, these movies are completely different. Like this is a little more silly than Deliverance. Deliverance is very, very serious, very shocking, out there to make a point. This is, yeah, we witnessed a satanic ritual, and now the Satanists are chasing us across Texas. You know, this is like something you'd expect from like a Roger Corman movie, which maybe part of me kind of thought that again because Peter Fonda was a Corman guy, so maybe that's why I associated it with that. As far as feeling like it's a TV movie, it did feel like a TV movie at the time, and this was my first viewing of it. I'd never seen it before this. I always thought it was a TV movie because a lot of those movies where you would be dealing with, the satanic cults and stuff often were TV movies. They weren't theatrical. But really, really enjoyed it. No matter how silly it gets at times. And I mean, I also miss now because of these, I kind of miss that you have Laura Parker and I forget the other actress' name at the moment.
Swit.
Yes, they're going to a library and opening up dusty old books, and it just works so much better than, oh well, let me Google it real quick. Oh yeah, there's our answer. It's so much better that way because it adds a little bit of mystery to it, and you get to you see the book as they're flipping pages, and they come across these old art, these old sketches and stuff, and it looks creepy. And I feel like that's something that's missing now. And I think that's why a lot of these movies now go, hey, let's set it in the 70s, let's set it in the 80s. Because we might have, the cell phone might have made our lives a little too easy in these situations. Because okay, yeah, apparently this is from a satanic cult and yada, yada, yada. And the scene's over in 2 seconds. There's no tension. But yeah, I absolutely love the cast too. I like Peter Fonda. It was cool. R.G. Armstrong to me is Pruneface from the 1990 Dick Tracy. That's who I always see him as. And immediately, even the way he's acting in the scene where he's introduced as the sheriff, you kind of get the idea that, okay, he's in on whatever's going on. But then, as I thought about it, as someone who's seen a lot of these B movies and has seen R.G. Armstrong in a lot of these movies, I'm like, he's definitely in on it. I think look what's happened to Rosemary's Baby. I think also had a sheriff who was in on it or something like that.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen that, but overall,
I mean, I guess what this has what's similar with this in Deliverance is that all the locals are really ugly. They're all missing teeth. all of a sudden is like whatever deal they're making with Satan is not good dentistry. I'm getting that as a part of coming back.
Whereas in both movies the city folk are mostly pretty attractive. Jon Voight, Burt Reynolds, and this Laura Parker is beautiful. So I haven't watched Dark Shadows in a long time, so when I saw her come on screen here, I was like, wow, she is distractingly beautiful. So yeah, you get Peter Fonda and Laura Parker showing up in this movie. So the city folks are always they're super gorgeous. They're very, very well kept and very, very metro, very very clean versus the dirty, ugly, toothless hillbillies in both movies. Which is...
locals, I mean, the director claimed that he hired actual Satanists to serve as cultist extras.
I mean, I believe that. If you watch The Devil's Reign, they Anton LaVey apparently was working on that, so I'm not surprised they hired actual Satanists. I mean, what does that entail in 1976, though? I mean, I don't know. I totally believe that. I believe they probably did that, and I believe there were probably a lot of them down in the Texas area during that time. The whole there's probably no more or less than there ever have been. But yeah, I could see.
I mean, the only thing, I mean, I guess it's kind of funny when I was watching. I mean, I enjoy watching this film, and Ferris is younger, so he actually enjoyed it as well. But I think what makes this film even more enjoyable is the car chasing. And I like that element of it because it's like when these cars are flipping over and stuff like that, they're flipping over. I mean, these stuntmen are like putting their lives at risk. And it's like, and I quite like that.
There's no CGI here, dude. This is these are actual cars flipping on the highway. I did kind of feel like Duel at certain points. Like towards the end, I did kind of get that vibe, like in Duel. As far as I guess you could kind of also compare it a little bit to Mad Max Fury Road, though not on the not as well made as Fury Road, but you have this pretty constant chase. It's not always happening, but it's happening pretty. You do get your little breathable moments. But this has a lot of cool action chase sequences for the 70s. It's not as good as like the French Connection, but it works for the purposes of what it's doing. Peter Fonda is always fun to watch, and
he's very odd looking as well.
Odd looking, but not. It's weird because he does at times look like his father, but then at other times not. It's really, really strange because there are points where you look at him and you're like, oh, he's definitely Henry Fonda's kid, and then in other shots, he does look a little strange. It's from certain angles, he's definitely his father's son.
I mean, this is another one of these films that's directed by an actor who turned director. Because Jack Starrett's in like what is it, that Mel Brooks film Blazing Saddles?
Yeah,
he's in. But before this, he made Cleopatra Jones.
I think he's in this too, actually, isn't he? I think he's one of the.
He's one of the gas station attendants. I don't know if he's the one missing.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the one with the cat where he's missing the tooth. I don't know if that's.
But he did direct Cleopatra Jones, and I'm looking now. What else has he done?
A Small Town in Texas. I know he directed that, but a lot of his stuff takes place in Texas. So obviously he's a good old boy from Texas. So
The Losers. Oh, he did the final chapter of Walking Tall, which that one I did not know about. I didn't realize there were 3 Walking Tall movies. I thought it was just.
I know there was. I knew there was 2.
Well, I knew that there was an original and a remake. I didn't know the original had any sequels. So I'm gonna have to. I'll check those out eventually. I had no idea. I just apparently he directed the 3rd one in that series. No idea.
And he also directed a couple of Dukes of Hazzard episodes as well.
Which makes perfect sense with the tone of this movie. It makes perfect sense that he would be directing episodes of Dukes of Hazzard.
But he looked like he did a lot of those, biker movies as well, like Hell's Angels on Wheels. He stars in The Born Losers, Angels from Hell, Hell's
a lot
Bloody
of
Devils.
Corman stuff. A lot of Corman movies. He made a lot of those, which is probably predominantly what I know him from, is seeing a lot of those B movies. The Trip, I think. Yeah, he was in The Trip with I think he was with Dennis Hopper in that one.
Grizzly 2.
Yeah, Grizzly 2 was wait, he was in Grizzly 2? Peter Fonda was?
No, Jack Scarrett, the director.
Oh, Jack Scarrett. Okay. All right. I was talking about Peter Fonda being in a lot of a lot of the Corman movies. Jack Starrett, I'm not too familiar with a lot of his work outside of this and Cleopatra Jones, and his stuff with Mel Brooks. But yeah, Peter Fonda, he did a lot of Corman movies, and that's predominantly where I know him from. That's who I was talking about when I said that. He late 60s, early 70s, he was doing a lot of that stuff with Dennis Hopper and with
well, they wanted him
Jack
for Kill
Nicholson.
Bill, didn't they? Didn't that Quentin Tarantino originally wanted him for Kill Bill
Instead of
I think
David Carradine?
Yeah, apparently.
Really?
There was talk about that at one point.
Huh. That's odd, because you'd think you'd want David Carradine because of the connection to Kung Fu. Huh. I had no idea.
I thought that as well, but I was reading it's only because I was watching Kill Bill the other day, and I was watching the extras, and you saying that they approached Peter Fonda at one point. So
That's puzzling to me, but I mean, I suppose if he saw something in it that or if he saw something in Peter Fonda that made him think he would be good in the David Carradine role, then hey, go for it. Who am I to to question Quentin Tarantino? But I would have.
maybe it's because maybe he didn't think of the David Carradine part is maybe it was rewritten just as the boss guy instead of like a kung fu expert. Then we got David Carradine, maybe reworked it slightly that way.
Yeah, maybe that's
for his character. So
yeah, that's very possible.
Maybe something like that.
Tarantino, I would not put that past him.
So, because I know he does a little bit of rewrites to fit the actors that he ends up casting. So I know sometimes he does that. So,
but then again, this is the guy who, when he was making Jackie Brown, had the De Niro wanted the role that went to Robert Forster, and Quentin went, no, I want Forster in the role, not De Niro. And who would have made that choice in 1996?
Yeah.
And De Niro ended up playing a supporting role. So, who knows? I could totally see Tarantino just completely, pulling something and going, no, I'm going to switch this up and I'm just going to turn it into David Carradine. Maybe it was just the boss, like you said.
Yeah. And then, because then he could bring in the third, because if you realize it, I guess it would make more sense, because Kill Bill, I mean, you don't see David Carradine to Kill Bill 2 anyway.
That's true. Wait, yeah.
So maybe that's the reason why. Maybe that's he was reworking that at that point while he was doing Kill Bill 1.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe he found out at that point that shit.
Because the only thing we get from David Carradine is a phone call, where it's like, oh, don't kill her yet, or whatever. We can't let her go out this way, and that's all. All we get is a phone call. Really, that's all. I needs to get him in silhouette. So maybe the character wasn't fleshed out as the way they fleshed them out differently.
I mean, I didn't even think of that, because I guess I've always watched them back to back. I didn't realize. Yeah, Carradine doesn't show up until the end of the second.
Yeah, and because there's a year and a half between the release of each film, so it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible in that time period, or while he was filming, negotiations fell apart with Peter Fonda, and he was like, "Okay, well, I'll just rework this to make it to make David Carradine the boss."
Yeah, so I'll do the first movie, and while I'm doing that, I can rework the second script.
Yeah,
that's possible. So
it's just one of those things that the casting is so perfect that I never thought it could be anybody else. But then you hear that the original Don Corleone was going to be Orson Welles, and you think to yourself, how could it have been anybody but Marlon Brando ever at any point? But
actually, I could see. I don't know though. I could see a younger Orson Welles doing it. I don't know if I could see Ernest and Gallo or Orson Welles doing it.
Touch of Evil
wine commercials. Yeah, I can see him. I can see that one.
Touch of Evil.
By the 70s, I think he was selling wine on TV commercials, and that was a different Orson Welles than what we.
By the 70s, he was doing whatever gig paid him, so he could put the money towards his next movie while he was crashing on Peter Bogdanovich's couch.
Yeah,
because apparently he was just living in Bogdanovich's place rent free, because he's perennially broke. And at one point had the money to do some shoots on The Other Side of the Wind, went to Gary Graver's house unexpected, going, hey, come on, we got to go shoot this movie this weekend. He's, well, I can't. I took this job editing a porno. So Orson Welles sit there and edited the porn scene that Gary Graver was supposed to do. And so Gary Graver could just come do that. But yeah, supposedly, and I mean, I don't know how much of this story is true. Supposedly Welles was just constantly broke, doing whatever gig would pay him, was crashing on Peter Fonda's couch, but basically ordering him around without paying any rent or anything, which just shows the fondness that that Bogdanovich must have had for Welles at this time, because this is the guy who made Citizen Kane. He's like, I'm totally gonna let you take over my house, not pay me rent, and just do whatever the hell you want. Come and go as you please. Take over an entire room to be your personal editing bay, and just lay there like a lummox on the couch most of the day. But okay, but you're Orson Welles.
Orson Welles always reminds me of like Picasso, that no one had any appreciation till after he died. Then all of a sudden it's like Lady of Shanghai and the Magnificent Amberons and Citizen Kane and the Touch of Evil. All of a sudden it's like now they're considered like these fantastic work of art. But when they came out, they flopped.
Yeah,
every single one of his films flopped. It's kind of a shame, really, because now when you watch them now, it's like, oh my God, this guy was so far ahead of his time.
Well, they were the movies that like people who had like a reverence for cinema really, really liked. But that was such a small community. And I mean, when you think about, he died in 85? At that point was, the VHS boom. So suddenly, you can go to the video store and you can rent Citizen Kane, you can rent The Magnificent Ambersons, you can rent Lady from Shanghai, you can rent Touch of Evil, you can take them home, and okay, yeah, there you go. But he was doing movies like what was that? Necromancy. Like he was like doing like these one-off roles in like these cheap horror movies at that point, because he's just doing whatever he can to get his next movie made. He was like the consummate artist. And I think that's why other artists appreciated him, because he was a talented filmmaker, and I think people saw that. I think people knew how great an actor he was, because he kept making these great Shakespearean films like Othello, like Macbeth, Chimes at Midnight, and
he's a lot like Kenneth Branagh today.
I just saw the trailer the other day for The Haunting in Venice. And I remember it brought to mind that when I watched Murder on the Orient Express, his version of it, I felt like there was a better movie in there that maybe got cut out for time. And then when I watched Death on the Nile, I realized that this is around the time he made Belfast. And it kind of felt like watching Death on the Nile, while it's a perfectly okay, serviceable film, it's not, it felt like he doesn't have his heart into it. Because I felt like he knew Belfast was coming up. And I feel like he's kind of fallen into this, I'm going to do one for you meaning the studio. I'm going to do a movie that you want me to make, that's going to make you money, because I want you to fund this movie for me that I want to make. And that's kind of what I'm starting to feel is kind of happening with his career, because he's doing Death on the Nile, Belfast. Now he's doing another one of these Hercule Poirot films. And who knows what the next one, maybe the next one will be something really personal that he wants to do.
Well, he kind of did that through his whole career ananyway. I mean, if you look at Henry V, and then you got Dead Again, which is a huge box office, then Much to Do About Nothing. And then when he did it, when he's doing his Shakespearean stuff. But the only thing I find I find with Kenneth Branagh is his films lack heart. I watched them and I think, okay, everything looks good, everything films beautifully, all the actors are doing a fantastic job, but I never see the passion in any of his stuff. They always lack the passion.
I saw it in Henry V, and I saw it in Hamlet, and I saw it in Belfast. But a lot of the times when he's doing these other movies that are just like it's what I was saying about Death on the Nile. Death on the Nile, it felt like it was like, okay, I'll do your Hercule Poirot movie, but I need money for Belfast. So if you could, open up the purse strings for that, I'll make your Agatha Christie movie that you probably have
paint by numbers before I do an original masterpiece.
Yeah. I feel like, but like you said, maybe that's how it's always been with him. Cause he did kind of go through that because immediately after Hamlet, he did what was that thriller? He did like this thriller with him and Robert Duvall. Wait, I don't know if he directed that though.
Well, he did Frankenstein at one point.
He did Frankenstein in '94.
De Niro.
Yeah, that
De
that was,
Niro.
yeah.
That lacked something. I'm not quite sure what that lacked.
Thor. He did Thor. You forget that's a Branagh movie because it doesn't feel like a Branagh movie. It feels like a guy who's looking for a paycheck.
Yeah, precisely. And that too lacked heart. So, but yeah, interesting.
That's funny, yeah, because it was just serviceable. It did what it needed to do. It made a ton of money for Marvel, and then he went on to do, it's the joke that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon make in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. He's like, well, I'm sorry if I'm taking you away from whatever whatever indie darling movie you got to do. No, dude, you got to do a safe picture. Then you got to do a blockbuster. Then you do a safe picture. Then you do a blockbuster. Then you do a safe picture. That kind of feels like it's been what Brian has done his entire career.
Yeah, keeps them relevant.
Yeah.
You know what I found quite interesting is that Warren Oates and Peter Fonda are really good friends.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they love working
together?
Oh, yeah, they've done 3 films together. And they loved working together. And the reason why they did Race for the Devil is because they could work together again.
It's always nice to hear that.
Mm-hmm. There's if you get the Blu-ray, Race for the Devil comes on the Blu-ray with Dirty Larry and Crazy Mary. Dirty Mary,
Crazy Larry. Yeah, that's actually how I got it. And I've never seen Dirty Mary and Crazy Larry either, but that's one of those movies that's legendary. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I could get both of them in one shot right here, and then if we ever do that for the podcast, I have it, or some night if I just want to pop it in, I can just do that. But
it's good. I mean, it's a good part of those action car chase kind of films. Well, I mean, it is mentioned in Death Proof quite a lot. That he was Hot Pursuit.
Warren Oates also was mentioned. He was in Two Lane Blacktop, which is another great another great road movie. What was he in that? Let me look that up real quick. He was GTO in that. So yeah, he kind of had a fondness for these road movies. It's something else maybe
did he do a lot of horse opera movies as well, cowboy films. For some reason, I always picture him in cowboy gear.
Yeah, he's in a lot. Yeah, I'm looking through. It looks like a lot of movies that sound like they might be cowboy movies. Which I would not have seen. I've seen some of the police dramas that he's been in. I really want to see The Border, which is the 82 movie with him and Jack Nicholson and Harvey Keitel.
Oh, I've seen that. That's a good film.
I do want to see it. I gotta find a copy of that. The Wild Bunch. He's in The Wild Bunch. I've seen
The Wild Bunch. That's one thing.
I've seen In the Heat of the Night, and he's fantastic in that. Stripes with Bill Murray. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, Two Lane Blacktop, 1941. So yeah, The Shooting. So yeah, there's quite a few cowboy. Ride the High Country. So we're getting into a lot of cowboy movies, which I have not seen a lot of his westerns. He's even in.
He did a lot of westerns on TV as well. He did Gunsmoke, Wagon Train, Rawhide.
He even did a western directed by Peter Fonda called The Hired Hand, and I've never seen that. And I just added that to my watch list.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess he and Peter Fonda were friends. Warren Oates is somebody that I never really went into depth with. Like I never watched a movie because Warren Oates is in it. He would always be a supporting character in everything I'm watching.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that I know Peter Fonda stars and directs that one. Oh, and Doran is in that one too. I'll check that one out. I do got to find a copy of The Border though. I really want to see that. I've been meaning to check that one out for a little while. I can find a cheap copy somewhere. It doesn't look like it's streaming on any of the services that I have. So either way, I'm gonna have to. If I'm gonna spend the money, I'm gonna get a DVD or Blu-ray out of it. I'm not gonna rent it.
It's a good film actually. That's part of that Jack Nicholson 70s collection where there's a lot of good films. The Last Detail around that time.
The Last Detail is another one that I've not seen that I want to. Yeah, Nicholson in the late 70s and early 80s was phenomenal. I mean, throughout the 80s even. Like Ironweed was really good. And that's a movie that nobody talks about anymore.
I remember Iron Maid. I've seen that.
It was him and Meryl Streep. Yeah.
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 I mean, the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Nicholson. Those earlier films just before he reaches Jack Nicholson's stature, are very, very good.
Yeah.
Especially the ones just before One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Like the Missouri Breaks, Carnal Knowledge, a lot of that stuff. Yeah. Well, and even before that, he was doing all the Corman movies because he's in The Raven with Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, and Peter Lorre. He's The Terror with Boris Karloff.
The Dentist and Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, or he's not the dentist. He's the crazy patient that Bill Murray plays in the remake. So yeah, he did a lot of Corman stuff. There's a story that Robert Downey Sr. I've heard him tell the story that he walked onto the set of some Corman movie because Jack Nicholson was trying to break in as a writer. And he met Nicholson. He assumed he was the writer, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm playing this role." He goes, "Wait, aren't you a writer?" Nicholson goes, "Shh, I'm an actor now." Just whatever means.
Well, Jack Nicholson wrote the script for Head with the monkeys, that really trippy monkeys movie.
So he was one of those guys that he was just like, no, through any means necessary, I'm going to get into this industry. I don't care if I have to break in as an actor. I don't care if I have to break in as a writer. I don't care if I have to go get somebody's coffee. I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, it's a little harder to do that now because getting somebody's coffee, you ain't going to be able to afford an apartment in LA on that. Unless you have 12 roommates.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I quite like these little independent kind of film sort of thing. You know, I always quite enjoy those over the big studio sometimes pictures.
Yeah, I mostly do. I mostly like these smaller films most of the time over the big studio movies. I do have to ask you, when you were rewatching this, were you watching it on the Blu-ray?
Yep.
Was it recently that you rewatched it?
I watched it this week. I watched it yesterday.
Did
both films yesterday.
Did it look like the breasts on the woman that was being sacrificed were like fogged over?
Yeah, and that's I mean, to be honest, I mean, I thought it was quite funny when they were nude. There were the nude satanic worship that all the guys kept their jeans on and all the women were kind of running. But they were that's why I always thought it was a TV movie, because the women's breasts are never shown anyway. They're kind of like, even when they're dancing around, it's like they're so far in the distance because there's no close-ups of anything going on.
Yeah.
So,
but this looked like it was actually like censored, like in a way. And I was like, why would they do that on the DVD and Blu-ray?
I think that's every time I've seen it, it's been like that. I mean, I know it was like that on TV, but I never saw it at the cinema, of course, but I'm always kind of wondering that's the reason why I always thought it was a TV movie, because there's no swearing in this movie whatsoever either.
That's true too. What was it rated? Was it PG or something? I can't imagine this had an R rating.
The rating, well, there's no rating thing on here, so
I'll look on IMDb real quick. Race with the Devil, 1970.
Yeah,
it's a PG movie.
PG movie, so maybe that's why.
But then why put that in there in the first place if you're just going to censor it? But it does have a very TV movie cast too. If you really, when you look at it,
Laura Sweat was MASH, wasn't she?
Yeah, and Laura Parker was Dark Shadows. R.G. Armstrong's just a kind of a journeyman. Warren Oates, like you mentioned, he was in a lot of TV westerns. So yeah, that's another reason why.
Well, Laura Parker, just before she did this, was David Banner's wife in the first episode of Incredible Hulk.
Oh, that's right.
So, because Dark Shadows finished in 1972, so.
And again,
so she's making her TV rounds.
Paul Maslansky, the producer of this, went on to produce Police Academy, which is another movie that has a bunch of women dancing around topless around a fire for a completely different reason. They're all throwing their bras into the fire. So, yeah.
I mean, I quite like, I think it also gives a nod a little bit to whatchamacallit, nod to Rosemary's Baby, where it's like everyone that you're seeing in the background comes in at the end, and it's like they're all coming forward to like sacrifice them in their camper van or RV. It's like a curtain call for saying this at the end.
It kind of was. It kind of was, and yeah, maybe that's another thing. It did kind of feel like that Rosemary's Baby sequel at times. This is a lot better made than that movie was. That Rosemary's Baby TV sequel was a train wreck. But this was actually pretty enjoyable. This is a much better made little satanic sacrifice movie. I mean,
they made a lot of stupid mistakes though as well, but even though you're watching it and they're making stupid mistakes, it wasn't irritating. Sometimes when you watch a film and they're making stupid mistakes, you're going, they're irritating me. I was never irritated by this cast by any of their decisions.
I think that's the reason is the cast. The cast is so good that even when something happens that is kind of dumb, it works.
I mean, because there are some things you're kind of watching, it's just like, like they're having that conversation at the gas station and the back window's out because it's been crushed in. And they decide that they notice that the person's earwigging, so they shut like the vinyl curtain so that no one can hear them. You're like, what are you doing? Well, he can't hear us now. The vinyl curtain's shut.
And even that initial scene when they're, he notices in the binoculars that they spotted us, and he's still telling his wife to be quiet. No, don't tell her to be quiet. You're wasting time now. They're coming after you. Jump in the RV and go now.
I was actually watching that, and Ferris looks at me. She goes, "Why is it always a woman screaming out, honey? What are you doing? Shut up. Get back inside. What? So, are you coming in? Shut up. What?" I mean, even though there's a lot of like craziness that kind of goes on in this movie, I find it really, really entertaining. I could watch this film all the time. I don't know what it is.
This definitely has some rewatchability to it. I could definitely, like, more so than Deliverance. Deliverance is a little heavy to watch a lot of times.
Yeah,
like
it is.
if I'm gonna discuss these two movies as far as a pairing, maybe this would be the B-side, because it's not as well made as Deliverance. But if you're looking for a movie that's just like more fun, this is definitely the more fun watch than Deliverance between the two.
I mean, I remember when I interviewed Laura Parker and I mentioned Race for Devil, I go, it's one of my favorite movies. She goes, really? Yeah.
Wasn't she on an episode of Kolchak the Night Stalker too? Was that her, the witch episode?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, because that was Dan Curtis, wasn't it?
Yeah. Dan Curtis produced that.
And for some reason, for the longest time, I thought Race for the Devil was a Dan Curtis production for some reason. I don't know why.
Because he was doing a lot of movies like that. He was doing a lot of movies like that, yeah.
Burnt Offerings and all the other stuff that was coming out around that time. They all had that kind of similar feel to it as well. I guess if Karen Black popped up, I mean, fantastic.
I was half expecting her to.
Yeah, with her black eyeliner. Oh,
but I guess what we should do is probably too, because I've been watching a lot of movies. I've run into a lot of Karen Black too. So I just watched Lee Van Cleef movie that she was in called The Diamond Thieves, where she is the woman who's taking care of an injured Lee Van Cleef after he gets shot during a diamond heist. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just like going off on a tangent again. Like, we gotta.
Oh, I love Karen Black.
So do I.
At some point, we're gonna have to come back to the Five and Dime Jimmy Dean.
I could see if Mark Patton's willing to come on. We'll probably cut that.
Okay.
Cut that part out. But yeah, I can check.
Because the reason why I like to cover that is because it's got some of my favorite. I mean, first you got Mary Kay Place, and not Mary Kay Place. Kathy Bates in her first movie, and then you got Sandy Dennis, which I love. Sandy Dennis, I think she's fantastic. Karen Black, and then you got and then of course Cher in like one of her best acting roles, really. And it's just like that's one of those things that because it's a stage production that's been filmed by Robert Altman, you just can't go wrong with it. And Mark Patton is brilliant in that.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing against Mark Patton, but he was being, he said he was typecast because of Freddie's back for Freddy 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. He said he was being typecast for the character he played in that, but I had to sit there and say that every film I saw him in before that, he always played a gay character. I don't know what it was.
Have you seen the documentary Scream Queen?
Yeah.
I saw it with him there in person at a film festival a couple of years ago, and I think they mentioned that even there. I think they mentioned it even in that documentary.
Yeah.
That
he always appeared quite effeminate characters. I mean, I know 4 or 5 things I've seen him do, and they're always. I mean, he's very good in them. I'm not, nothing against him as an actor, but they're all tend to be someone who's a bit effeminate or gay or alluded to that sort of thing. So,
well, yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. It's alluded. It's very heavily alluded to, but yeah, it's
yeah.
And sadly, in the 80s, I guess that was something that could still injure your career because
Well, I think yeah, in the 80s, I mean, during the AIDS epidemic and all the other stuff, I mean, I guess there's a lot of homophobia going on at the time. Now, I mean, I with the gay, I mean, now they're talking about that straight actors can't play gay characters anymore. That only gay actors can play gay characters. So I'm not sure how that's all going to pan out eventually, because I can understand it. But what if a gay actor wants to play a straight character? Should they be allowed?
That's where you're going to start getting into a lot of slippery slopes here. Like like, you know what? When it comes to like white actors in blackface or yellow face, I absolutely get why.
I get that.
That one absolutely. I might like the Charlie Chan movies, but yeah, we're not. Yeah, that's definitely not something we should do anymore.
I guess we won't be covering the Robert Downey Jr. Thunder movie.
Thunder. But it's weird because like a year or so ago, there was a little bit of a backlash towards him for it because like the younger generation found it. Like Robert Downey Jr. was in blackface in this movie. Like, yeah, but he was playing an actor who was playing a guy in blackface.
Yeah, precisely. And because he was stupid.
The point was he's a moron who doesn't. He's Ted Danson. He's Ted Danson in 1992 is what that is. He's making a point, and I guess the point went over your heads because the point wasn't, oh, how cool is it that I'm in blackface? The point is this character's a moron.
Yeah, precisely. I thought he did fantastic. I found them funny. I thought actually he was the best thing in that movie.
Yeah, he
really.
He is.
So the movie has a lot of dipping going on it. There's some funny bits, and then it kind of dips and gets a bit boring, and then up it comes again with his acting in it. So,
but I feel like a lot of people need to learn like context, why something is the way it is. Like it wasn't a movie that was saying that blackface is good. He's making fun of the fact that this guy who thinks blackface is cool is a complete moron. Like, you need to understand when villains do something, it's not an endorsement of what they're doing.
Well, I think with something like that, I think a lot of people jump on the bandwagon without actually seeing the film as well. So you kind of get that going on. It's like, oh, they hear like a little snippet and it's like, oh, it's a bit like sometimes like you see like a film that's banned for whatever reason because it's offended somebody. But then when you watch the film and you see everything in its context, it's not offensive. But if you take something like a little bit of out, then it is offensive. But if you see it in the context of the film, it's not offensive because it's actually talking about how wrong this is instead of like perpetrating about how great this is.
Like that movie Cuties that was on Netflix a couple of years ago that everybody made a big deal about. And then when you actually watch the movie, it's like, no, it's making the opposite point of what you're accusing it of making. It's actually precisely on your side, but you are so into your beliefs that you can't see past it.
Precisely, it's about how wrong this all is, how this is not acceptable, and all this other stuff. It wasn't like saying, "Oh, this is how things should be." I mean, I am surprised, in the current, climate that we're in, that no one's ever picked up, What Kids by Larry Clark. Now that film is wrong. That film is wrong in every single way. So
there are movies like that when you watch it, you're like, ooh, this kind of feels a little scuzzy. And that's why
I felt that way when I saw it when it first came out, before. And I remember seeing it going, and everyone's, lauding about how brilliant this film is and how, what an artistic and artful film this was. And I'm watching it going, where are these kids' parents? That's what I was thinking. It's like, ooh, I'm not sure if I, for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad film. I'm just sitting there saying it made me feel uncomfortable all the way through it. So
that was definitely.
I think I just think anyone who felt comfortable watching that film, I think you might want to put them on your neighborhood watch list.
Yeah, like to me, movies like that make me more uncomfortable than every horror movie you could ever throw at me. Like I could sit here and watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 50 times. I know that's not real. I know that that's not going to happen. I know that I'm not going to, the odds of me making a wrong turn somewhere in Texas and ending up lunch meat for Leatherface and his family are practically non-existent. But there are people who have views where, like you said, if you think the movie Kids is something that's, absolutely okay, everything in that movie is fine, it's an endorsement, then okay, maybe you're somebody I don't want around.
And if you go to someone's house and every time you go for dinner, let's watch a movie, they bring out Kids, it's like, you might want to avoid going that. This person's not a film aficionado or whatever. It's like, you might like, there's something wrong with them. This is my favorite all-time movie. Picked posters of Kids all over his yard.
Oh boy, that would certainly be a little bit of a red flag.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna slowly leave now. But well, I guess we should rate Race for the Devil. So how many stars would you give Race for the Devil?
Probably about 4, because like I said, it's an enjoyable movie. It's not perfect. It's definitely a movie that, I'm glad I bought the DVD, because I will absolutely rewatch this at some point. I'm glad I saw it, because I did really enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely. I like Peter Fonda. I like Laura Parker. I like R.G. Armstrong. I like Warren Oates. So I really, really glad I finally got to check this out. And like you, I thought going in it was going to be a TV movie. So I had no idea that it was a legit theatrical film. 4 stars. Definitely check it out. It's a fun movie. Not as heavy as Deliverance. Probably more on the rewatchability scale than Deliverance is. Deliverance is definitely the better movie of the two, though. But Race with the Devil is not exactly a slouch. It's just a fun, cheesy B movie that has, a similar setup. City folks going into the wrong part of a small town.
Surprisingly enough, though, it was made for $1.745 million and it grossed $18 million.
Good.
75.
I mean, good, because
so it was a box office success.
Yeah, 18 times its budget. Yeah, made 18 times its budget. It's definitely a success. It's a fun movie. I absolutely go watch it. It's a fun, cheesy, turn off your brain and watch this goofy ass movie kind of movie.
And it has a 64% rating based on 14 reviews, so that's not bad.
Yeah, not
Ratings
bad
is normally 5.5. That's not too bad. There was talk of a remake at one point. Kevin Smith says he has said Race with the Devil was a strong influence on the film Red State.
I can see that.
And the film also has the basis for the Tomo language for the film Kasagu, released in 1981, and Drive Angry, starring Nicolas Cage, released in 2011.
I've never seen Drive Angry. I think that's
it's fun.
Is it? Yeah,
I recommend it. Watch
I
it.
think
It's
that's
a fun film.
Todd Farmer and what's his name? The guy who made the Valentine's Day, My Bloody Valentine remake, right? I generally like their stuff. Let me look real quick. I think it's them. I forget the guy's name.
Watch Drive Crazy. I highly recommend it. It's better than Ghost Rider.
Patrick Lussier. That's the guy's name. Yeah, he's a guy who started out under Wes Craven, and and I think Todd Farmer wrote it. Who wrote My Bloody Valentine, the remake to that, and I think he wrote Jason X, which he wrote Jason X.
I like Jason. I like Jason X.
So do I, because I think Jason X is in on the joke more than any other movie in that franchise. Well, except for maybe Part 6. It's like the kids say now. He understood the assignment.
Yeah, I like Jason X. I can't fault Jason X whatsoever. I know everyone slags it off, but I loved it.
It's got a tiny budget, yeah. It overcomes it though, because it's genuinely entertaining.
I mean, does it make sense how all these kids are piloting a spaceship? No, but I still enjoy it.
Does it matter? Also, no.
No.
The fact that the first time I saw it, I'm sitting there with my girlfriend, and these two kids start having sex, and that's when you see Jason's thawing fingers like start to move. I was like, yes, this movie gets the absurdity of this. My girlfriend's like, so wait, dead Jason knows they're having sex, and he's waking up so he can kill them. Like, yes, it's perfect, tonally perfect. And then by the time you get to the scene where you get the two hologram girls, and they're both in their underwear. They're like, hey, want to smoke some pot or have a beer? Or how about premarital sex? They both take their tops off. We love premarital sex. Cuts to something else. When you cut back, he's got each one in a
sleeping bag.
In a sleeping bag, and he's using one to beat the other to death. I was like, this movie's perfect. This movie understands everything that that the Friday the 13th movies are meant to be. And I, for the life of me, can never understand why so many people dislike it. I'm like,
I love it.
No, it doesn't take it seriously, but who the hell can take Jason Voorhees seriously?
No, I even like the kills. The kills are really well done. Like the girl being sucked through the hole in the spaceship. It's like
the girl getting her face shoved in the nitro
liquid,
liquid nitrogen, and then getting her face bashed. Perfect.
I know.
I love that movie. I love Jason X. And here we are on a tangent about Jason X.
I know. Well, my rating for A Race for the Devil is a solid 4. I can watch this anytime. I've seen it many times. When I found out this was on Blu-ray a couple years ago, I was so excited I had to go buy a copy. I was like, to me, this is like, there's a couple films that I really love that I'm not embarrassed by telling it, but I do show to people more frequently, and this is one of them. The other one is Angel. High School.
I love Angel
by Night.
I love Angel. Yeah. I unabashedly love Angel too. I've never seen the sequel, so I gotta see those soon.
When you told me last year about Vinegar Syndrome coming out with the Blu-ray of that, I went and bought it that day, and it came like 3 days later, and I was like a pig in shit. I was just so happy.
That's a fantastic,
and I've watched that so many times. And anytime anyone comes over and goes, let's watch the movie, I bring out Angel 1 and Avenging Angel with Betsy Russell. Before she went on to do Saw films.
I have to see Avenging Angel. I have not seen it yet.
It's fun. It's not as good as Angel, but it's camp as Christmas. But the third film is a really letdown. So unfortunately, but I got 2. So I saw both of them at the movie theaters when they came out. So I was happy. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the Literature License podcast. Next week we'll be doing Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold and the film from 2009, which was directed by Peter Jackson, and that will be our book to screen. And part of our America Goes Dark. May will be Crime Has Many Facets. And of course, Doctor Who will be continuing with the storyline Reign of Terror, where basically they're stuck in the French Revolution and it looks like they're all held prisoners and accused of being English spies. And then, of course, this brings us to Batman the Anime Series, which will come to the likelihood of Robin's Reckoning, which will hear the origin story of Robin. And of course, we'll be covering 2 other episodes. It will be Night of the Ninja and Cat Scratch Fever, which I can assume that's probably Catwoman. And of course, the remake will be Eternal Affairs from 2002, the Hong Kong film, and the American remake, which is The Departed by 2006, which was directed by Martin Scorsese. And of course, M&M, our Monsters and Mad Men for the end of the month will be Sinister from 2012, and we are still here from 2015. So it's good night for myself. Good night, Joe.
Good night, everyone.
And we'll see you next week for Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold and the 2009 film directed by Peter Jackson.
To the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads. All my memories gather round her, miner's lady, a stranger to blue water. Dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrop in my eye. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia.